You know what, kid? Take it from a former professional wrestler's own mouth. This stuff hurts. Whether you're getting hit or falling on your front, back, or side, professional wrestling is an endeavor where daily pain is par for the course. WWE superstars certainly know this, and tough and calloused to the ring wars as they are, there are still the occasional bumps that shock even their battle-hardened systems. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 devastating bumps WWE stars regretted taking. Join us. Number 10, the Dragon gets snake bit. In order to supercharge the feud between Ricky Steamboat and Jake Roberts, WWE devised an angle that would see the Snake level the Dragon with a DDT on the concrete floor prior to their scheduled match on the 6th ever episode of Saturday night's main event. Roberts was apprehensive about the angle, believing that Steamboat wouldn't be able to protect himself as his head hurtled toward the floor. It was only after Ricky had assured his foe that he would be fine that Jake agreed to go ahead with it. Well, it turns out that as skilled as the Dragon was, he wasn't able to prevent himself from kissing the concrete and was KO'd as a result. Roberts would later recall that the impact sounded like a watermelon exploding and that an unconscious Steamboat was the heaviest thing he has ever had to pick up in his life. Ricky was stretchered out of the arena to sell the devastating effects of the DDT, not that he didn't actually need it since he had a serious concussion. But since this was the 80s and concussions hadn't been invented yet, Steamboat was back in the ring just 4 days later. Number 9, the Duchess is kicked out of Dudleyville. Stacy Keibler wasn't exactly known for her in-ring exploits, but she did get physical from time to time. Though predominantly found at ringside, Keibler competed in the occasional match and in her role as manager also took a bit of a pasting. I mean, the pasting was usually somebody smacking her on the backside, but still. In late 2001, Stacy took charge of the Dudley Boys, guiding them to both the WCW and WWE Tag Team titles, which they unified during the Invasion storyline. The success did not last forever though, and when Bubba Ray and Devon's luck turned, the Dudleys themselves turned on their Duchess. On the Raw after WrestleMania 18, Keibler accidentally cost them their match with Billy and Chuck and promptly found herself taking a trip through a table. The Dudleys had put countless women through tables before, and it was a relatively safe bump, with Bubba's butt taking the brunt of the impact. But according to Stacy, this was the worst bump she ever took in her career, telling Sam Roberts how she lay amongst the splinters hoping the feeling would come back to her fingers and still experience neck issues years later. Number 8, HBK's casket catastrophe. Shawn Michaels was good at pretty much everything as far as the old pro wrestling game was concerned, but his spectacular bumping certainly helped make him stand out from the crowd. The Heartbreak Kid would throw himself around the ring and outside of it with reckless abandon, taking spectacular falls that weren't exactly conducive to having a long career. Despite the wear and tear associated with his punishing style, it was one bump in particular that almost put an end to HBK's days in the squared circle. While defending the world title against The Undertaker in a casket match at the 1998 Royal Rumble, Michaels was launched over the top rope with a back body drop, his lower back clipping the edge of the casket on the way down. Shawn was fine immediately afterwards, but 2 days later he couldn't get out of bed and knew that something was seriously wrong. Turns out that innocuous-looking bump had herniated 2 discs and crushed one completely. The showstopper only wrestled one more match, dropping the title to Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania 14 before taking a 4-year hiatus to recover. Number 7, Kevin Owens ramps up the danger. In the tradition of Mick Foley, Kevin Owens has in recent years become WWE's resident big beardy guy with a penchant for taking brutal bumps. Falling off very tall things, falling through things, or just taking the most ridiculous moves imaginable, nothing is off limits when it comes to what KO is willing to put himself through in the name of sports entertainment. That said, he does live to regret some of these escapades. Speaking with ESPN ahead of Money in the Bank 2023, Owens singled out taking a chokeslam onto the steel ramp from Braun Strowman at SummerSlam 2018 as the single worst bump he had ever taken in a career full of ugly ones. According to the prizefighter, he felt a ringing in his body for 4 months after, and though he's unsure if it was directly related, ended up taking 6 months off not long after. I mean, who would have thought that being chokeslammed on a steel ramp would hurt so much? Besides, everyone. Owens has also cited a missed rolling flip from the ring apron to the floor during a match with Bobby Lashley as a bump that had him questioning his choices. Number 6, Bret Hart hits the guardrail. Bret Hart prided himself on taking care of his opponents in the ring and never, in the course of his long and illustrious career, injured anyone in the heat of combat. That's one of the reasons the Hitman took it so personally when that big idiot Bill Goldberg kicked him in the head and effectively ended his career. A decade before that big idiot Bill Goldberg did what he did, Bret took a bump that had him lying on the floor struggling to breathe. Hart was wrestling Dino Bravo at a house show in Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens on October 29, 1989, when he was knocked off the apron and collided with the metal crowd barrier. The excruciating pain was immediate, and Bret couldn't even speak, let alone stand, with Bravo giving him a few kicks before throwing him back into the ring and going for the cover. Hart didn't want to lose to Dino by pinfall, however, so he rolled back out of the ring and took a count-out loss. A subsequent trip to the hospital confirmed broken ribs and a broken sternum, yet the excellence of execution was back at work just a few weeks later. Number 5, Seth Rollins sails off the cell. Hell in a Cell. One of WWE's most enduring gimmick matches has produced some of its most iconic moments since it first made its debut at Bad Blood 1997. From the start, WWE fans have been falling off the bloody thing, with Shawn Michaels taking that maiden leap of faith in the Cell's debut outing. Since then, many have taken the risky bump, with Seth Rollins citing the second time he did it as the moment he thought his wrestling career had come to an end. Rollins and Dolph Ziggler were, in Seth's words, sent out to save the rotten finish of the Universal title match between Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman and took a stereo bump off the side through the announce tables. Recalling the pain with ESPN, the architect said he lay there thinking he may have to call it a career upon landing, noting that they did the stunt without the aid of a concealed crash pad under the table. 5 years later, Seth's lower back still hurt from the bump, which may have contributed to 2 fractures of his lumbar spine. Let that be a warning to anyone thinking about taking a bump off a cell. Number 4, Drew McIntyre drops to his doom. Warning ignored, apparently. 2 years after Seth Rollins nearly snapped himself in half by falling off the side of the cell, Drew McIntyre suffered the same fate. The Scottish Warrior was defending his WWE title against Randy Orton at the Hell in a Cell 2020 pay-per-view when he fell off the side of the steel structure. Drew said that even though he was quote-unquote only 10 feet up, the added height of his body and the 280 pounds of prime beef he carried on it, combined with gravity, led to one hell of a fast fall. McIntyre not only received nasty whiplash from the bump, but he also bit through the middle of his tongue when he landed and ended up looking like a snake. To cap off McIntyre's crappy evening, he lost the match and the belt to Orton, bringing his first WWE title reign to a particularly painful end. Number 3, Jeff Hardy obliterates a table. By rights, there were about 50 or so bumps from Jeff Hardy's WWE career alone that could very well have finished him off. For the charismatic enigma, jumping off a ladder or going through a table was as routine as taking a hip toss, and his exploits in stipulation matches such as TLC are the stuff of legend. He may have been more durable than most, but Jeff did indeed suffer for his art. Of all of the spectacular thrills and spills from his highlight reel of a career, Hardy pointed out one particular bump that stands out as the very worst he ever took. Challenging Rob Van Dam for the Hardcore Championship on the August 23, 2001 episode of SmackDown, Jeff attempted to win the tattered belt by hitting RVD with a swanton bomb from the top of a ladder through a table on the floor. This time though, Hardy had placed the table vertically, and when the whole flippin' show moved out of the way, Jeff couldn't flippin' breathe. Assuming he had broken his back upon impact, the Daredevil lay in a pile of debris as EMTs came out to check on him, and the match was ruled a no contest. Number 2, Kurt Angle takes a chokeslam for 2. Kurt Angle's body was beaten up years before he decided to pursue a career in professional wrestling, the Olympic hero knowing full well that he was bumping on borrowed time after winning a gold medal with a you-know-what. He may have been aware that one wrong move could lead to tragedy, but that didn't stop Angle from going full throttle every single night. Protecting his neck may have been at the forefront of his mind, but the worst bump Kurt ever took had him more worried about soiling his singlets. Angle was wrestling Kane on the January 14th, 2002 episode of Monday Night Raw when the Big Red Machine went for his trademark chokeslam. Attempting to get out of the move while goozled, Kurt grabbed referee Charles Robinson and tried to use Lil Nate as a human shield. Yeah mate, I'm sure the 7-foot masked monster is going to let you go on account of that. Sure enough, Kane followed through with the move as Angle himself nearly followed through when Robinson landed directly on his stomach. Number 1, a big swing and a near miss. Backlash 2003 was the scene of a giant mismatch as Rey Mysterio took on the Big Show in a singles contest. The world's largest athlete had a major height and weight advantage over WWE's so-called biggest little man, but Mysterio had proven his toughness and perseverance time and time again, not least by repeatedly coming back from serious injuries. Show won the bout rather easily, but wasn't satisfied with the victory, and as Rey was being strapped to a backboard, decided now would be a good time to work on his baseball swing. He picked Mysterio up and flung him into the ring post, with the master of the 619 dropping to the floor upon impact. Rey had been okay with the bump beforehand, assuming that he would be protected by the backboard, but didn't consider that Show might not be able to hold on to him after the thud. It was hitting his head off the floor that did Mysterio in, and he had to go to the hospital afterwards. Thankfully, he wasn't seriously injured, sustaining a big bump on the noggin as well as a sprained thumb and wrist, but this could have been way worse.